being, of course,
By the way, it's recording.
Okay, that's kick ass.
See, but that's good candid interaction too. So, where you're not, I didn't tell you I was filming, so it kind of lets you.
Hey man, what's up? This is Anthropos right here. You're on the unique.
If you can see inside your soul, the souls are love, are wrong. If you can see inside your miracle, and if you can feel the words I'm sending you with love, if you can feel the heart-struck miracle.
And let me tell you the final secret of this. Right. Another episode.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god, Nancy. Nancy, do you realize how much close this motherfucker is? Jesus Christ, Nancy. Nancy, roll up your window. Nancy, roll up the window. Baby, it's putting a light on us.
I got my binoculars. I'm doing all this. Gunter, come here, Gunter. Oh man, all right. Yeah, looking all around with these binoculars, huh? Ooh, what's that? Oh yeah, we're doing an investigation. An investigation. That's it. All right. Already. Anthropos here with another exciting episode of You Don't Know. You don't know, huh? So don't act like you do. On the air tonight, coming in on the telephone from an undisclosed location, probably in the United States, we've got Molecule Man. Molecule Man is involved in several secret programs, hence his hidden identity, which is not to be yet to be revealed at this time. And Molecule Man, are you with me?
Yes, I am. Here I am. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, sir. Thank you for joining me tonight for another edition of You Don't Know.
I'm glad to be on here.
Kick ass, man. And anyway, we had said something about, if there's going to be any cussing or something. Well, my roommate's not here right now, and whenever they come in, I'll let you know, and you'll kind of know. We can cuss before that, but after that, we can't cuss. All right. Okay. So anyway, let's just let you do a free flow, and I'll keep the questions coming, as it pertains to your information. Just start wherever you like, Molecule Man.
All right. Well, everyone out there, you hear all kinds of information. Well, I'm going to try to show that I can give you probably the best, the most condensed information you'll get anywhere when it comes to just diversity all over the wall, everywhere. And so anyway, I'm not going to claim I'm a super soldier or I'm part of any open programs, but there's a lot of silent programs I'm a part of, very passive programs. First of all, I want to claim that I'm a vampire. And I'm not going to give you this accent like I'm from Romania or anything fake. This is all real. And you've heard of psi vampirism. Well, yeah, we got that down. Basically, it's an evolving factor. Like, for instance, becoming a vampire. There was a defector from the Illuminati who decided to make his own vampires. He took vampire technology, and I'm going to refer to it as technology that's centuries old. And actually, vampirism is one of the oldest super soldier programs. So when I say I'm not a super soldier, I'm just not a super soldier of the 20th and 21st century. I'm a byproduct of something from the future and the past, because much of my technology of vampirism comes from the future that has actually been outlawed. Maybe somewhere around 25th century, 23rd. I don't have information exactly when it becomes outlawed. But the reason why is because it's a combination of ancient and future technology where a black hole torsion field is put into the center of the person. And my soul gets ripped out and upgraded to a black hole. Don't think of it as a gravitational black hole, but it works like one. And it pulls in all kinds of things like money, suffering, sex, feelings, events, desire for promotion, having kids. All these things actually drain you dry. Well, the vampire drains you dry at that. And one reason why I became a vampire is because you were going to sell your energy anyway. All of humanity sells their energy to the Archons, aliens, things like that. You know what? If you're going to be a sellout, might as well go ahead and sell it to me, because I want to use this to climb the chain, the food chain, and we're all part of the food chain. We're all being loosed for what we're worth. So what I'm going to do is I use that energy to re-harness back into my life force, so you can use it to get rich, open up events. It uses quantum energy, and it's torsion fields that bring in energy inward, like collapsing torsion fields. That's the harnessment of the power. And in fact, we are a type that when the Earth becomes more radioactive on its surface, we're designed to be the mankind that survives. So it is a super soldier survival that we feed off of radiation. So now that's the first step. There's different kinds of tribes and different kinds of vampire theories, and I've investigated it. Well, there's one guy from India, he blesses objects, and he's been a vampire for perhaps, what I'm hearing, thousands of years old. And haven't got an exact number how far back it goes, but he's been here for aeons, I've been told. And he knows how to impregnate the Kalima energy into objects, where now I'm going to become a genetic vampire. I just need 3 more full moons and I'm there. And so it's a whole new level of it. So I'm incorporating different kinds of theories together where I'm a multiple hybrid vampire. Because every vampire has a weakness when it's attacked by magic or psychic or psionic. There are some weaknesses, I think, to everybody. Well, if I become a multiple hybrid, I decrease my weaknesses. Because, see, my original vampire is a right spin, where the torsion field spins right. That's a spin of holiness. And churches that face, when you enter them, when they face east, the Orthodox churches were very aware of east. That was a holy direction. That's when you look at Muslims and the facing of Mecca and everything, there's awareness about the energy of the east, energy flowing from the east, and you absorb it. So that's the reason why Muslims bow down on carpets 5 times a day. Not all of them, but the more practicing ones. They're trying to absorb this eastern energy. It actually, the whole jihad thing is all about accumulating energy. Now, your average Muslim doesn't realize this, but your Sufi, your mystical Muslims do. It accumulates the sun energy rising in the east. When I sleep, I always face my head east to gain the most energy. So you are going to learn some things, some very practical knowledge. There's a science behind it, but remember, science is a tool. Don't get lost between science, meaning being conscious. That's what it works. It means conscious. It's the language of your conscience. And then there's scientism, when it actually becomes a danger and a cult, which is mainstream science.
Of course.
And so that's why one must use it as a tool and don't turn it into your religion. And as we know, the word religion means to reyoke or reconnect. But here's how I look at it. And forgive me, I'm going to bounce all over everywhere on different subjects because
right.
I think all these subjects relate to each other.
Shoot.
And in order to understand one, you got to explain 3 other subjects just to come back to that one. So science is the language of the conscience. Religion is the language of the unconscious. So remember, when you see religious images, if you take them literally, you're applying the wrong tool. You must apply the language of the unconscious, which means that you will have a whole new set of eyes, reading holy scriptures, holy texts, the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran, and so forth in the Bible, the Tanakh, Torah. You got to turn on your unconscious. Well, that's where the power of vampirism comes in, is when you awaken your unconscious and envelop your conscious world. And that's why I have a black hole vortex, where it's more like dark matter, or what quantum science calls dark matter, dark energy. Well, it's really dark energy. It's like a Luciferian vortex. Now, Lucifer has different definitions depending on what secret society you go. He's like a multi-dimensional phenomenon. And I don't think there's any gospel about what Lucifer is or is not. In my alchemical studies, and when I was initiating the alchemy, my alchemical teacher said, I asked, what is Lucifer? And he said, it is your mind. And I said, well, why is it fallen? It's your mind that's fallen from knowledge. And so, is it right, is it wrong? Well, hey, just take it for the enlightenment's word. Every white male is Lucifer, okay? When you develop your vampirism, that's Lucifer more incarnate. That Lucifer is the collective unconscious of white males. Every race, whether female or male, has a divine language behind them. I don't care if you're black, female, Hindu, whatever. You're going to have a mythos that backs it up. But I can just speak more highly from the white male, as Lucifer is the white male unconscious that's trying to climb back into the heavens. And that's what I'm aiming to do. So one can ask, okay, well, are you Lucifer? Yeah, but so are you.
Okay, now, are you, now you're part Turkish, and so are you a white man?
Well, I'm a white man. In fact, I think I have more Caucasian in me than the average white man, because I don't have I'm only 164th American Indian.
Oh,
so,
you're part American Indian too.
Yeah. So yeah, I descend from a line of male Turks, and then a line from female Caucasians, and that's, by that definition, is what a Nephilim is.
That is the definition of a
Nephilim
Nephilim?
shuffled around for years.
Fascinating.
Yeah, so the hybrid of those two actually create the Nephilim line. It's the only line that can actually challenge Yaldabaoth, or the Yahweh, or the demiurge, or it's going by many names. It's the only one that can challenge this power.
Okay, well that's interesting that you'd bring up Yaldabaoth. So you know what that is, I guess.
Right, it's the Gnostic nickname. Different Gnostic schools have, that's what they commonly call the creator of this world.
Well, yeah, the creator is something. I'll leave it at that. I'm not
we can that's a whole new subject itself about what that is. We can say the creator of the Matrix, which is an overlay of
I think that would be more accurate
upon the original reality that is laid upon.
Right, and I'm as you know, as I'm sure you know, many of these Western Hermetic societies, for instance, one of the secret societies that I'm in, it honors Yaldabaoth. And, of course, most Christians do not realize that, Yaldabaoth and the Yahweh are, in fact, one and the same.
Yeah, see, we got to be really fluidic about it, because I don't stick to just orthodox. I mean, I think we should put all the ideas on the table, and the listener, they just take for what it's worth, according to their studies. But, let's define this demiurge creator. What is it? Well, it depends on what school. Now, it depends on what layer you approach it. Is it a lizard? Well, I've got good, strong evidence that there is a lizard that's actually number one and calls itself Satan. I don't think it's originally named that. I just think the lizard just adapted that because that's the title that became addictive and popular. I don't think it was its original name, thousands of years earlier. It changes its name compared to what's popular in language.
Sure.
To engulf. Now, that may or may not mean that is the ultimate identity of Yaldabaoth. Yaldabaoth is also to be like another form of your own unconscious while it creates. It's your subconscious. Excuse me, let me rephrase. It could be your subconscious.
Well, we know that the Archons, quote unquote, that they not only live out in outer space, but they live in our minds as well. So that would back that up. Now, as far as being the creative aspect, I'm not so sure about that because the creative aspect seems to be what these archontic beings lack. Or else what? Or else what do they need us for? You know what I mean?
Right now, there's the Carlos Castaneda. What that was all about is exploring. They're called the let's see. I want to say the mud leapers.
The mud flyers.
Yeah. Okay, that's another term. Well, they're supposed
that's
to be,
the one Carlos Castaneda uses. The mud flyers.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now
he also calls them the mud shadows sometimes.
Yeah, there we go. That's another term, right?
And Don Miguel Ruiz, who is from a Toltec shamanism lineage, he plays it off more or less like it's something psychological, but he calls them the predator in the Four Agreements, which is, of course, a very popular book.
Wow, well, that's fascinating. Thank you.
Yeah,
well, it said that when you feel more like crap, they come closer. When you start feeling happier, they leap away. But just because you start feeling happier doesn't mean that there's not a monopoly on your consciousness. Because I think, well, when it comes to the vampires, like, technically, I have become an Archon. Maybe that means I'm a piece of crap for doing that, but I think the Archons are far more than what we realize. Like, it depends what species you are. Are you talking about something that's not human versus human? Well, the human beings, there are humans that can actually become Archons, and I think different Archons, there's different kinds of Archons.
Sure.
But
sure. Yeah,
I
you bet.
I seat of one of the Archons.
You did what with one of the Archons?
I filling the seat, like,
Oh,
like
yeah. Well, my only question would be about that. And of course, you're right. It has to do with which narrative you're going with. But say, for instance, with the Sophianic narrative, becoming an Archon would be going backwards. But if the Archons were created to be the original humanity, but it was a failed type of experiment.
Well, let me tell you how I view it. Okay.
Okay.
It's okay now. We as humans would like to favor ourselves in the best position. And anything below us, well, that's natural. We're the natural predators. Anything above us, well, we probably want to demonize it if it gets in our way, which is totally natural. But the way I look at it is I look at it as I'm the farmer and humanity is like cattle, which is the reason why the Ashkenazi, Khazarian Jews in the Kabbalah and in the the text, they refer to everyone else besides those cattle. But what they did is they're wanting to think that they're Yaldabaoth's favorite. Well, anyway, back to the subject of an Archon. An Archon is an authoritative position, and a vampire can fill that position. And there's different entities that can fill that position because the Matrix has like 72 major positions and many more minor positions. These are pockets of power that you can control.
That's reminiscent of the 72 Shemhamferish of King Solomon.
Oh.
The goetic quote unquote demons, there's 72 of them, so it's definitely speaking the same language there.
Yeah, and you hear the 72 names of God. What this is it's pretty much like 72 positions of the Matrix.
You bet.
And when you get onto one of those positions, you have one of the 72 things of what goes on in the Matrix.
Yeah.
So the combined will of those 72 pretty much run the show. And the reason why, the thing is, one can rally against the machine all you want, but you're not going to get anywhere. You're still going to grow old and die and reincarnate and still be stuck here. Because nobody escapes. I don't care if you die or not. You don't escape, but you have. I think the only way you can leave the Matrix is you have to walk through it alive. I don't think anything dead can leave it.
Well, that's fascinating that you bring that up because we hear so much about space travel these days and alleged nuts and bolts space travel, and I don't want to get into the moon landing or anything like that. But when the ancient Egyptians speak about space travel, but what's the one thing that they always have to do before they go out into space? They have to die. That's right. And so what they think that they're going to get there, or not get there by dying, but get there only after they die or whatever. Go up in this light ship or this whatever it is. So that's a fascinating idea.
Well, there's a movie called Dark City. If you notice the guy, in order to beat him, you have to join him. You have to become like them so you can walk through them. That's my goal. My goal is not to stop at an Archon, but I want to become an Aeon, which I'm on my way to developing. It's about developing your spaceship in your 55-foot aura. You have a spaceship model, but you have to fill it with plasma energy and all kinds of mechanical energy to start spinning.
Yeah,
so you can develop your engines and take off.
You bet.
And that's how you become part of your super soul, your oversoul, is you have to merge. And on a clear night in the city, when you leave the city and you go out in the country, some people you can see your own soul. It'll be a light that follows you that you can see in outer space. A lot of intuitive people who are highly intuitive, it's it's been nicknamed like a 10th dimensional substance called your soul. Well, it cannot ground to you until you develop your soul here. And when you develop your soul here, this thing will either land on you or you're going to beam up to it. But that's how you get back to your 10th dimensional soul. It's waiting for your development. That soul is like stranded out there and you're stranded here, but to connect it, it's like you have to build up your life body. And that's one of my goals. See, as a vampire, if you look at Egyptian texts, the Jedi initiate was developing different subtle bodies. There's the blood body, the mind body, the flesh body. They got different names. The name body, even the sacred name had a body.
Yeah, the etheric body, the astral body.
That's what vampires develop. Vampires just developing an extra few bodies that human beings are not. I think human beings are deficient in developing their multiple dimensional bodies.
Yes, I agree, 100%. Now, and it's interesting, and I don't know if it's using the same terminology, but referring back once again to the Sophionic narrative, the Aeons or the Aeonic gods or Pleromic gods, there's a couple that they name, and one of them is, of course, Sophia, not to be confused with this, artificial intelligence that's everyone's real crazy about right now, that's Sophia or whatever, but it's Sophia, the supposed Earth Mother Goddess, and then her male counterpart, Telestai. These are Aeonic or Pleromic gods, and so your goal is to become one of these?
Well, my goal is not necessarily locked into one school of thought, and it's interesting that, you provide a school of thought. The way I'm looking at it is an Archon is one who's authoritative over the Matrix, and I've actually navigated the Matrix, and now this doesn't have to necessarily vibrate with what you believe, but just take it for what I'm explaining.
Sure.
Okay? And what I've done is me and a friend of mine, we've actually mapped out the Matrix. We've actually jumped parallel timelines. We've even identified the rulers of each timeline. We have 13 timelines in the Matrix. And each timeline has sub-timelines and variations of those lines. All right, so, but when we left the 13th timeline, now we're in, okay, so when you're in the Matrix, it's called the space-time continuum. It's got 3 spaces in one time, but it's broken. What are the other 2 times to match the 3 spaces? Well, when you leave the Matrix, now you have you go backwards. Now you get 2 more extra time dimensions on there, and that's and how you get those 2 extra time dimensions, you have to fix them within yourself. And when you do, you can actually mentally and physically travel through time and teleport through space because you are more genetically complete. What I understand is lizards can already do that. Now, if they're so inferior, how come they can do it and we can't?
Say that again. If they're so what?
Go ahead.
Say that again. If they're so what? how come they
if
can?
they're inferior to us and we're supposedly have better extension, how come they can do it with ease, slip through time and slip through space, and yet we're still trying to figure it out and hoping one day we'll do it? So there's something wrong that we were way behind, even though we like to think that we're spiritually inclined. There's a thing where you have the concept of your potential, and then there's the thing of just fulfilling your potential. And maybe that's the difference between those who extend and those who don't. But in my opinion, I found that ascension is not the lovey-dovey head to the light thing like we're supposed to.
Yeah, well, in the
I
Bible,
interpret it's more about climbing the food chain.
right, and of course that's a very Masonic idea, but there is a lot of truth to that. And not that there's anything wrong with Masonry. Yeah, but the idea of the Greek word, the epinoia, which is the creative aspect that the human being has, we're told that the Archon does not possess this creative ability. And in fact, in the Bible, it says that, and I'm not a Christian, by the way, but in the Bible it says that the angels, that the mankind is somehow going to, in the long run, be greater than the angels somehow. And so we get the idea that these angels, they may be different, very all-powerful in their certain realms, like the angel of music is the most powerful music, the angel of, whatever, yoga is the most powerful of this, but they don't seem to have very much imagination.
And can I throw out a paradigm here? You're going to like this one. Now,
Let's hear it.
Whether you believe it or not is one thing, but it's a very simple and yet very challenging concept.
Okay.
All right, so it may just take me like 3 minutes to explain.
All right.
Okay, now, maybe 5. All right, so now let me go ahead and tell you, from my experience, not anyone else's, but from my experience and according to my studies and my own growth, an angel is actually a shaman or shaman, okay?
Okay.
It is a man or a woman who develops connections with birds. I'm not talking about just simple bird watching, but yet that's how it begins. Ancient shamans would actually tear off the vulture wings of vultures and wear them. This is where we get the myth of various gods and beings that look like they wore feathers, but they really weren't natural growth. They're artificial costumes. Well, these ancient shamans believed that by merging with the birds, they became the birdmen, the shamans, and they became our origin of angels. And they were the inspiration of a lot of divine beings, especially if you look at the Sumerian and Babylonian pictures, lots of the gods wore wings. Now, a lot of people say, oh, those guys are from outer space, this and that. It's like, if they were from outer space, it would look pretty much more obvious as more outer space, but it is very, for an educated view, it looks very shamanistic, okay? Now let's go for another thing. Look at the werewolf. The werewolf in American Indian culture and various cultures, Transylvanian cultures, several cultures have the werewolf incremented into the mythos. It's very real. We just think because we see in Hollywood, well, it's got to be fiction. Well, before Hollywood, these things existed. It's pretty much shamanism that merges with the wolf and becomes one with it.
That's absolutely right. I agree with you 100% on that.
Okay. Now, so go with me on this. So now let's go for the serpent race. Okay, this is where it gets controversial. We've heard of the reptilians, right?
Yes.
The mythos behind it, they come from this, they come from the serpent stars, and you got the constellations. Well, in a certain matrix way, yes, there is a mythos and a history and a heritage that may be intergalactic, interdimensional. But I'm going to state right here, and this is the only time you ever hear this, I think the reptilians started right here in our own backyard.
I agree.
When men started messing with snakes and serpents, reptiles, and merging with the consciousness, and when you merge one with the consciousness, it created a whole matrix, a whole history that goes back millions of years in the future. It creates a reality. When you merge with the reality of the animal, and the animal merges with you, you create a new synthetic timeline. It becomes more real as it becomes more ingrained in the matrix. See, that's what people don't understand. The matrix history can be rewritten in your timeline.
Yes.
People don't realize how fictional they are and how fictional the timeline is and how artificial and how conscious. It's like a make and a remake of conscious people. Shamans can rewrite reality when they climb real high up, especially when they go to the dark room. And that's a place of hyperspace. Okay, That's when we get the suicidal hyperspace travels.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So you see the concept, the birdmen, there's lion men in Africa, there's elephant men in Africa. There's different tribes in Africa that literally shapeshift. I'm not joking with this. If anyone in the audience ever hears about this, go become friends with African. Now, don't just sit there and ask them for 10 minutes what they know. They're not going to feel comfortable talking about this until they know you. I was roommates with some Africans, and then they blew the story on me. That's when you start to hear the highest grade of magic that you ever seen. It comes out of Africa, and these people turn into animals. There's the alligator people. And man, I could tell you a whole show of what the adventures in Africa be. It puts Indiana Jones shows to shame. But there's elephant men, for example, that actually, what they do is they go into the jungle, and like right when they start to become men, the elephant men tribe will actually initiate and go hunt for the spirit of the elephant in the jungle. Where witches and different animals reside in the spirit world. And if the elephant spirit approves you, then you will absorb it and go back and finish the ritual back at your tribe. But you can't eat or drink anything for like 2 weeks. Magic keeps you alive. This is an actual real initiation. So the spirit of the elephant wants to experience the human nature. Human nature wants to experience the power of the elephant. Therefore, it's the elephant man. Okay, so that goes along with the realm of vampires. Now, some vampire groups are probably possessed by reptilians. There's also the insects, which may actually be a competitor of the reptilians. That may be involved in Yaldabaoth.
Are you talking about like
Yaldabaoth may have insect interaction?
Are you talking about like the Insectoids? Like
yes.
The praying mantis type creatures?
Right, the praying mantis. Every human being's got, I've heard, 3 praying mantises chewing on their 8th chakra.
Well, let me tell you, that's fascinating that you say that, because I had an interview with the psychic Christopher S. Jacobs a few weeks ago, and he told me that I had been visited by insectoids recently. I mean, I didn't know what to make of that. But you're saying that every man, woman, and child has 3 insectoids with them at all times?
An average, yeah. And now, if you smoke or do DMT, dimethyltryptamine, people have actually seen some of these on the refrigerators, cabinets in their house. And so they'll just be casually just, gnawing away or whatever, just sitting. They're natural predators. Now, let me give you an insight on a possibility of what they were. You hear the mythos of an extraterrestrial, right?
Yes.
Well, then now there's the idea of interacting with the insects on the shamanistic level. Now, this may have actually opened up a portal between parallel dimensions, that we have one where what if humanity came to dominate the world? Then there's another one, what if reptiles came to dominate the world? We as mammals, reptiles. Then what if the insects came to rule the world? Well, what if the parallel dimensions actually interact with each other? We have to look at that fluidic kind of concept that could they have reached over with their biophysical body, their astral body, and overlay upon us, and that's how they feed on us. They can see our dimension, and they see it as a natural energy food tool. And they may have actually made up some breeds of high-ranking vampires, where a vampire is a human host that takes in greys, and the gray works for the reptilian works for the praying mantis. There may be a hierarchy.
A hierarchy.
That's one breed of vampire that it's not my breed, because my breed actually chews them up and grinds them up. My fifth dimensional vortex actually eats ghosts and poltergeists, reptilians. Reptilians will start to get sick around me. Entities have to stay clear of my vampire vortex. It's designed to chew them all up.
Huh.
So
fascinating.
Yeah. So now, according to my source, I may have told you this off radio. There's a source that's connected in Hollywood that may be in touch with the ultimate reptilian. This reptilian, if we can get negotiations started, he's got to rechange his contract with this reptilian. And the reptilian that likes to go by the charade of Satan, in our modern times, he's pretty much the master one of the Matrix. Don't know if he has any competitors like Yaldabaoth or whatever. We're going to get into that once I get to meet them face to face, and this may take me 3 years because this entity will not trust me until I get through this one guy. But I told you, Nephilim, I'm designed to actually challenge Yaldabaoth, and I help this guy. In other words, I got a hook in Yaldabaoth's ass, if you want to take it literally. And there's some events that have opened up where we're going to be able to maybe access Hollow Earth physically. This is not astral. I don't have time for astral travel games, hocus pocus. I'm all about material, literal, and I use quantum energy and everything, but I'm all about the literal. I don't have time for fiction. But this entity that this reptilian or whatever the consciousness that possesses this person took over that person's body at age 12 by permission, and all of Hollywood and all of Washington, D.C., everybody that counts throughout the world has to check in with this reptilian. All other reptilians do too. So,
fascinating. And so there's a human being. There's a human being is this a human being that I would have heard of? Is this a famous?
Yeah, person? Yeah. I don't want to really reveal too much because I don't want somebody like a bunch of people like, oh, hey, I heard you were Satan. And they're going to deny it. They're not there. It's not. This is probably not yet meant for public consumption because I want to get in there first. I want to see them with my own eyes. Just find out what's happening, separate the fact from the fiction, separate, the exorcisms from Hollywood from reality, because there could be some disinformation, but what I want to do is get to this person, sit down, but I may be able to have access to Hollow Earth, is what I understand. There's a Hollow Earth community where there's a whole new different set of rules, there's peace, everything, but yet a new world order is on the surface, and they have a different agenda. It's like they despise man. They believe that man should work hard and labor. I understand the goal is to chip mankind. But yet in Hollow Earth, everything's different. I heard there's trains that go to Hollow Earth that you can be there in an hour, and that they go about roughly around 4,000 miles an hour, like Mach 5 or somewhere around there. And that you're there in an hour. And there's cat people, dog people, there may be giants. I mean, there's things you can't even imagine that you think that should only be on a movie that are just everyday stuff down there.
You bet. And this whole Hollywood connection, that's an interesting thing that you bring up, and the implied power of Hollywood, because if this person who's this leader of this archontic force or whatever that's indwelling in a human being, you indicated they're deeply entrenched in Hollywood. And that brings up a synchronicity for me because a lady I was dating up until just only a few weeks ago, and we're still good friends, and who I was basically seeing for about the last year, is a Hollywood movie director, and so
right.
It's fascinating.
Well, as this time goes on, I'm going to know more. There's things I know, there's things I don't know. But, as a vampire, I'm still my infancy. I'm 49 years old, going to turn 50 years old later on this year. That ain't nothing. That doesn't prove nothing. What will prove something is when I become 100 years old, 200 years old. And see, I'm about to turn 50. I can climb trees. I can jump fences. I can do anything a 20-year-old can do. No restrictions whatsoever. I don't have a bunch of achy knees, all that stuff. And I don't even exercise. I'm a couch potato, and I can sit there and do a lot of things that people half my age. Okay? So, but see, someone could say, well, okay, you got good genetics. Well, my story is going to be proven by my longevity. The 21st century is just my beginning. When what I say is going to really matter when it's the 22nd century to 23rd. And many people, and almost everyone who's hearing me right now, they're going to be all dead. I mean, everyone I know is going to be dead. And I have to prepare for that. But I'm really prepared for long because I'm going to be a walking time capsule, and I'm going to have a story to tell. I have a Buck Rogers journey to go to because I want to see the things, when we've had history change, people manipulate the past.
Yeah, of course. The idea of the chronology deniers.
Our past is a myth more than anything, and everything is not in the scene, especially when you go back 500,000, 2,000 years. The chronology is messed up between, when we talk about the paper trail disappears after 1,000 years.
Yeah, and the chronology deniers, yeah.
There's forgeries everywhere, and it doesn't match the astronomical records.
Right, it's all one big fucking lie.
Right, and it's called alternative history, revisionist history, but it's got too much proof for mainstream. The mainstream, if it can't explain it, they ignore it, which debunks mainstream in itself. Anything mainstream is a cult to me. It's the biggest cult, It's like, okay, if you've got to believe in ABC News and CNN, if you question it, well, you're a conspiracy kook. Well, if the CIA invented the word conspiracy theorist to debunk critical thinking, anytime it ever caught on to what the bigwigs are doing, yet they had to retitle the way of thinking to say it's just a theory. So see, when poor people, middle class people do crime, they call it a crime, but when rich people do it, they call it conspiracy. But yet in court, they still say conspiracy this, conspiracy that. So conspiracies are natural. People just automatically think that you think the conspiracy, oh, you're a kook.
Yeah, it's more the rule than the exception.
Right, like why do you think you lock your doors in your neighborhood or your car? Because you're afraid someone's going to conspire to break into it, right? I mean, why do people have security cameras so there's not a conspiracy to shoplift and do this and do that? I mean, think about it. They try to make your mind that once you see the elites doing something, oh, it's just a conspiracy, it's just a theory, we don't have proof. Well, that's not true. I mean, if investigators and people who convict people, they have to look for conspiracies, or else people would never go to court and prison. And now, every now and then, for a fall guy, they do catch rich people. So, but back to the shamanism, and so you kind of get the drift. What I'm saying is that shamans, when they merge with animals, they develop a synthetic new human.
Yes, I do. And let me tell you, this idea that you have of these, I don't know if they're Anunnaki or, that we see on the Sumerian boss reliefs of these men with wearing, bird wings and stuff like that. The idea that these are shamans. It's the first time I've heard that idea, and it really is resonating with me.
Yeah, see, I'm giving you some practical stuff. Now, I'm not saying extraterrestrials don't visit. That's a whole new can where we could talk another hour, and I do think extraterrestrials are real. But we have to make sure we don't lose our own heritage as an ancient people about what we already are. And we mix it with well, we could never make the pyramids, aliens must have done it. We couldn't have done this, aliens must have done it. But no, I think man is brilliant where it does accept intervention, but I think we've had innovations that have been incredible in the past, and just because we don't understand it does not always mean aliens did it. I think ancient man was a genius. Like for instance, ancient Egyptians were able to map out stars without being able to see them with telescopes. You know how they did it? They did it with out-of-body experience. They actually mapped stuff that you can't see. And because they meditated, they went into shaman mode.
Yeah.
See, the power of the shaman is more impressive than anyone can ever imagine.
Yeah, they had the ability to see into super sensible worlds and just see the truth, and so I'm totally down with that. And the idea, first of all, giving way too much credit to the quote-unquote aliens, extraterrestrials or whatever, or just the fact that if you finally come to believe in them, which it is real, but they're asking you to believe in a definition that is a lie.
Right. See, me and you talk about this. When you see a UFO, that's exactly what it is. It's UFO, unidentified flying object. It does not mean it is extraterrestrial, nor does it mean that it is not. But each UFO must be defined into different terms. Some are natural phenomena, which is usually the way, hey, we don't want to explain it. Yeah, some are natural phenomena. Some are demons. Some are actually dragons, ectoplasmic beings that live in our atmosphere, kind of like similar to goldfish in our oceans. Uh-huh. Some are actually higher dimensional beings. Some are time travelers. See, we have to think more fluidic, that we live in a multi-interpretational universe, and that when we see phenomena, we must not restrict the definition. That we have to be prepared for several definitions of what we're looking at here.
Yeah, well, some of them are Bigfoot too, possibly.
Yeah. Some of them are just higher dimensional beings. You just never know. And then me and you talk about Bigfoot. You've had an encounter. I've had an encounter. My encounter was when I was a kid, and me and two other kids back in the 70s, we saw one back in these apartments we lived in my town, and the roar was so loud it just shook everything. And I was thinking, if this is fake, how in the world could they get everything shaken? Someone had some loudspeakers, someone trying to keep me off their property. What in the world? Yeah. And so I've come to learn that there's different definitions. Now, in the ancient American Indian, they recognized it as a being separate, but I've also known that not all Bigfoots are equal. I don't think Bigfoots originate from one source. I think some Bigfoots, not all, but some Bigfoots are actually shapeshifters that live among us, kind of like a werewolf, and they have extra dimensional, extra spiritual essence to them. Some Bigfoots live in a parallel universe where they actually open up gates. Now, there's one where there's a city not far from mine, where on the farmland, it's pretty common for Bigfoots to come and go. They're actually entities that come and visit all the time. And but they don't want a spectacle. They don't want people coming all over the United States crowding up their farms. That these entities come through.
Yeah.
And now some try to think that Bigfoot's like this large monkey or bear that's just as elusive. But here's how I look at it. I think if they were normal animals, we would have seen more remains by now. We would have seen the poop, the bones, the fur. It would have been way too much evidence because they've been seen in, a few comments. Look at the bottle of snowman. Now, let me give you another angle. There's a secret Buddhist sect that actually works on developing their I'm trying to remember the image, but what they do is, even since children, they build up thought forms. And one of the thought forms is actually building up your fur suits, where they actually create their own Yeti-like suit, where they, as monks, go do stomping on the mountains, and they try out their uniform. It's made out of pure thought form, and this may explain some of the Yetis.
Now, who does this?
There's Buddhist sects that actually, since children, they practice on creating thought forms. And I think the term is called like a yidam, something like that.
Are these Nepalese people, or what type of people are they?
Well, we're talking like Tibet and some parts of China.
Yeah.
Where they actually develop thought forms, and they become so powerful by the time they become like 30, 40 years old, 50 years old. Their thought form capacity, they build these bodysuits, kind of like an astral bodysuit that becomes more and more solid.
Yeah.
And all human beings have the capability of building their yidam. But it takes hours of dedication every day. I mean, years and years to be able to develop the manifestation where you build these thought forms and they become more solid. And what they do is they put these thought forms almost on like it's a suit, and they're able to go stomp in the snow without feeling the cold. And what I understand is that the Chinese Communist government, and their little secret sect, their version of them might be always after these monks, especially when they practice these things, because they think this is outrageous. Don't be going out there performing all this stuff, showing it off. We don't want it. So there's a big rivalry between certain Buddhist sects and the governments of China, and they chase after these monks who develop various paranormal powers, and the Yeti is one they chase after.
Oh yeah.
So here we go back to the shaman theory again. So I think that we have to look at it multi-faceted, and that one of the facets is shamans are becoming some of the Yeti. Now, some of these shamans become so powerful, whether they live or die, they can project their consciousness and they live on. So when a shaman, angel shaman dies, or a bird shaman dies, they can still appear as an angel to people in the living world in between incarnations. See, many of us have divine or extracurricular manifestations between lifetimes. There's mermaid people where they've been mermaids between lifetimes. I've met a few where they believe they should belong back in the ocean. that's where they'll probably have a soul development called an elemental,
Yeah.
where they have a water elemental attached to their soul.
Okay, so what's the name of the water elemental?
Yeah, that's where we get the mermaid mythos coming in.
Yeah, and of course I've got mermaids tattooed on my arms, but I'm trying to in the classical, occult sense, the gnome is the symbol of the earth, the earth elemental, and what is the symbol of the and the salamander is the symbol of the fire elemental.
Yeah, the salamander fire, and then there's interesting salamander lizard mythos. There could be a connection there.
Yeah, there sure could be.
And then the sylphs are from the sky, where they may have strong connection with the angels.
Right. So I knew that. So now, but do you know the name of the water elemental?
Yeah, the mermaid. There could be another term, but
the ancient
that's
word
the
for
reference we can make now.
Well, the word that they use for it in the occult is the undying. Undine.
Right.
Undying. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so some souls have elemental attachments to them in between incarnations. Like, you may have fire, like salamander souls that may actually be responsible. They want to work in the nuclear field, like, develop something like that. They may, like people who actually are, the Undine or the Mermaid, they may want to join the Navy. They may work for the Coast Guard. They may stay with their elemental and don't even know why.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then like people, sylphs, they may actually want to become pilots when they're incarnated in human form. And in astral form, between lives, they may develop in the clouds. Now, if you look on Jehovah's Witness pamphlets and most people, they look at heaven as in the clouds. Well, I think the sylphs are the ones that actually develop that. Because on the sylph dimension, on the astral plane, sylphs, I think, are developing a lot of phenomena around clouds. And they actually build cities on the astral level in the cloud, literally in the cloud. So if you hear about angels resting on clouds, it's probably because of the sylph consciousness. And as you notice that Christianity, Islam, and Judaism has attached that consciousness, so it shows how powerful the sylph consciousness is in our religions. So, see, when you kind of put these things together, this is proving our multidimensional facets of each human being and how these elemental. Now let's go to the gnomes. The gnomes are about the underground. A lot of people who like to gnomes actually naturally get high clearances, and they like to work in underground bases. They may want to work in, they may be addicted to working, in digging for archaeology, things like that.
Or being a miner, like a miner mining for gold.
Right. In fact, some of our mythical forms were actually miners. In ancient times, when they mined, their spirits were still there. This may have been one of the forms of what we call an imp. Spirits in the earth. They usually like to do their patterns from lifetime to lifetime, but we'll find that the humanity has always been connected with his own divine making. We just think that it's another world, but it's actually just our other side of our astral consciousness in many cases.
Right.
Like my mother, she said that when she was I think she was 2 years old, she remembered little elves were called out from behind the bed, and her father called not, or may have been her grandfather, but she could have sworn she saw him. And I think when you're a child, you're still in touch with past incarnate images. And what I understand is that up until age 6, you have LSD-like chemicals in your brain that may actually mean that your dimethyltryptamine is pretty high functioning, and that your brain is more multi-portal access to a lot of things, and we learn to turn it off as we start to grow up.
Yeah.
You need to say goodbye to your invisible friend. You need to just grow up. Well, you may have had those invisible friends, maybe past life residue, or it could be that you're still highly psychic. You could still see into the fourth dimension, fifth dimensional planes. So.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, and so when you really look at it, being a vampire ain't no big deal at all. It's just another development of mankind's consciousness. And when I became a vampire, it's about adapting to nature. Vampirism is like it's a type of super soldier program. See, I think the angels are shamanistic super soldier programs, so they actually have more power in battle. Because if you notice, if you ever watch Archangel Michael and Gabriel, they got swords, they're ready to kick ass. They're warriors, they're super shamans, giants. The giants, I think, were super shaman programs back then, where they figured out how to grow babies larger to get stronger, larger warriors, so they can emphasize ancient empires stationed there to emphasize the world power at a different level. When conquerors conquer, they want to. I think that's what the gods were. Period. Is they tried anything to amplify the human to superhuman. And so now, are there extraterrestrials involved in there? Maybe. Are we a hybrid of extraterrestrials? Maybe. But see, you also have to look at parallel universes. In one parallel universe, we have a different origin than another parallel universe. So now you've heard of the we evolved from monkeys concept, right?
Yeah.
Well, from one angle, from a Darwinian point of view, it could be a Masonic Illuminati program to put the ape upon the man to separate himself from higher consciousness. I've heard that as a Matrix program. Now, in another aspect, you can look at it, well, did we really evolve? Maybe in a parallel version, maybe we did. I mean, yeah, you can tear apart the theory of evolution if you really wanted to.
Yeah. Well, no, a child could do that. It's complete bullshit. Now, not that evolution is false. Now Rudolf Steiner teaches us that that evolution is true, except that it's just all the way completely backwards. In other words, all of the minerals, all of the plants, all of the animals evolved from mankind. They're cast off emanations of us before we became fully into physicality. That's why in the fossil record, they seem to be older than us, when in fact we are the original prototype.
Right, so see, it depends on where your consciousness wants to go, on how you really want to lay it out, because the higher the consciousness goes, the more you rewrite your own reality. So the idea that man came from monkey is a rewriting. It's a quantum rewriting of history that becomes a synthetic reality.
Yeah, definitely.
And in fact, the more you believe, I believe that the more you believe in evolution, the more you become consciously linked with the baboons, with the chimps, that you become more genetically like them.
Yeah.
Darwin looked like a monkey, and a lot of the artwork there,
Yeah.
Again, I look at Darwinism and evolution as another form, a secret form of shamanism, where you became linked with another animal.
Yeah, definitely.
Now here I want to introduce another concept to really make sense out of this, to really, fly this ball out of the park. It's called the morphogenetic field, or morphogenic field.
That's what makes crop circles or whatever.
Well, the morphogenic field is also connected with the term epigenetics, where it's a transfer of energy, not just genetically by blood, but by energy.
Yes.
Through the waves, through the air, through the ether.
Yes.
Now, when you're roommates, or when you're with a wife, or when you're with family, you all start to look like each other, not because you're genetically related, but because you're exchanging. You're exchanging genetics on an etheric level, programming back and forth.
Yes.
And so that's the reason why when people, even roommates, boyfriend, girlfriend, animals, you start to look like your pet starts to look like you. Over a period of 5 to 10 years, you actually exchange a portion of your genetics where you're actually part of each other.
Yeah, this is also the concept behind that, we think of as spies and the honey trap, that somehow some young lady is going to seduce the spy, the German commander or whatever, and get the valuable information. And now we're learning that that's more of a Hollywood type concept, that what might really be going on is these honey traps go in there to have sex with these leaders or whatever, and just by having sex, that transmits through this process that you're talking about, this epigenetics or morphogenetic field, transmits information subconsciously, and then the honey trap goes and has sex with their handler, and the information is transferred to them, and from there they can use the information about the next troop movements and stuff like that.
Oh, wow. So, when a woman has sex with a man, every single time, that part of that piece of that man's genetics will be with her forever, replicating, in the sperm. So, but when we just stick to the etheric transference of this is what's happening, and I think that's like your belief system. You become your belief system. So, evolution, the theory of evolution, I think, is an occult experiment to actually increase like muscle strength. There's super soldier programs to actually put the monkey and gorilla strength into super soldiers.
Sure.
And I think evolution, the theory of evolution of the monkey may be related to that, but the humanity doesn't get to experience that. But yet, if you look at, there's so much controversy about where we came from, but yet if you notice that we can't all agree about where we all came from, I don't think man originates from one source. I think we originate from a dozen different sources. Because we're multi-dimensional beings, we come from different dimensions. I think man not only originated from off-world, but we even originated from another dimension.
Well, I kind of believe in that, but I think it's more of the pattern. I think that man is of the earth and did originate in the earth, but there is a universal or a cosmic pattern of this, either of a man or of a human or maybe a humanoid. There's a cosmic wisdom at play for sure.
Well, see, you look at the black man, you look at the American Indian man, or the Chinese man, and everything. Those theories that we all came from different kinds of humanoid systems. That heard the black man was engineered in the Sirius system, the humanoid was engineered in the Lyrian system. But that's just one mythos in the New Age. And again, I don't get locked into it, because when you get locked into only one theory and one theory only, then you're going to miss out on other theories. And maybe, in the end, all theories are true. Like, maybe some people did come from God. Maybe some people were here before. Like, you've heard the Adam and Eve story, that there's people here before Adam and Eve, and maybe the Adam and Eve was based on like a new type of man to be engineered.
The Adam Kadmon, or the realized human being like us, as opposed to the Adam Kadmon, the spiritualized man. And now, but there is a record of these things. For instance, a year and a half ago, I was in Jalapa, Mexico, where there is a museum that Stuart Swerdlow used to speak about, and he called it the Reptilian Museum. Well, I was down there involved in some blood sacrifice rituals and some other types of rituals with shamans, and we decided to go to this one museum, and I immediately found myself not being planned, but in the actual Reptilian Museum in Jalapa, Mexico, which has the greatest collection on earth of certain types of Mayan statuary and statues and stuff like this. And many of the art pieces that are thousands and thousands of years old depict men turning into walking lizards.
Wow. All right.
So I cannot say to the audience, for a fact, I can't sit here and tell my audience that reptilian shapeshifters are real. But what I can tell you is that reptilian museums are real, and artwork depicting reptilians are shockingly and frighteningly real. And at the same museum, this is where they have the Olmec heads. Are you familiar with those?
Yeah.
Okay, well, as you know, and I've been up close enough to touch one of these Olmec heads, and they were discovered by oil companies trying to exploit the resources of Mexico in the 1940s or 50s or whatever. They got in the way of mining for oil or whatever, drilling for oil. Well, they are wearing these headgear, which of course the ancient astronaut theorists say it's a space helmet or something. But one thing that's undeniable is that these gods or men or whatever they are, these depictions, which each one is individually, imagined or engraven into this rock, they're negroid. They're Negroes. They don't look like Mexicans. They don't look like Mayans or Apaches or Aztecs or anything like that. They're obviously black men, and it's from the Yucatan of Mexico. So that's fascinating.
Well, there's an entire nation of people that were here before Columbus. That before we were called, you see the term United States of America is a corporation owned by the Crown Temple of London.
Of course.
Which in turn is owned by the Vatican.
Of course, yeah, and which in turn is basically controlled by the pharaonic dominators.
Right. when people honor the red, white, blue, okay, we imagine it's called patriotism, but actually it's worshiping the corporation called the United States.
Well,
The red, white, blue were brought here by the British and by the the Vatican.
Well,
but
right.
The nation.
Yeah,
go ahead.
The Vatican's colors, there's the colors, there are countries that are just red and white, for instance, Switzerland and like Canada. But yeah, we're team red, white, and blue. Well, look who our other teammates are. Well, what are the other flags that are red, white, and blue? Well, there's Australia, there's New Zealand. There's Russia, by the way. So yeah, we're on team red, white, and blue. And it does have a lot to do with patriotism, but it goes much, much deeper than that. And I cannot reveal these things about my initiatory experiences, but I will give you a hint and tell you that in one of my initiations, they saved my life with an American flag. Let's just put it like that.
All right. Well, let me tell you what it is. Before Columbus and all them came over, this is already an empire. It is called All Morocco. That is the true origin of America. It's All Morocco. Now, there's a thing where people try to say, oh, it's named after Amerigo Vespucci. There's no real link with him.
There is no real Amerigo Vespucci. That's just a made-up character to give it an excuse for having it called that. America is America. It's Egyptian words, ancient Egyptian words, syllables put together. Me, that's your house, I believe. Is one of your your subtle bodies and stuff like that. So it's all, and I don't even want to give too much credit to the Egyptians because they're based on something probably Atlantean or something. But yeah, they know that there are Egyptian pyramids and everything in the Grand Canyon.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
did you know Akhenaten actually made it to Oklahoma? There's an actual Akhenaten stele that was found in Oklahoma early in the 20th century. Proving that Akhenaten actually made it to Oklahoma.
Fascinating. I did not know that. Do you think he came on a boat in the water?
Go ahead.
Do you think he came on a boat in the water?
Oh yeah, I think travel and trade was quite ancient, and that's where we get the myth of Atlantis. I think Atlantis as a consciousness was actually an ancient trade route, and that's the reason why you can't find Atlantis in just one area. Like, you can find proof that Atlantis were in different areas because there's multiple trade routes.
It's a worldwide it was a worldwide civilization, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Maybe at odds with the Lemurian civilization, but
What I understand is Lemuria is actually just an ancient form of southern Russia and the northern Middle East. It's just a rename. It's like a New Age renaming of that, and there may be some kind of root words that go back. But what I understand is that ancient America was, remember when black people are here, they did not come from Africa, they were already living here. Well, there's, the Olmecs may actually be one of their oldest forms, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you ever look at the Moors, there's Moor schools all over the United States. And maybe elsewhere, obviously. They say that they were here all along.
Are you talking about Moor as in Moor?
Yeah, the Moors. And the Moors have a lot of synchronicity with Montauk. If you ever look at Peter Moon's books.
Yes, I've read several of them, and I did not know.
The Moors are connected with all time and space.
I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's an elaborate subject that only Peter Moon, which is one of just his pen name, he goes into details, and that the Moors are an ancient legacy that will probably a rival to the Vatican. And they're actually international. There's parts in Africa they own, parts in Asia they own. It's an entire nation, parts of Mexico. And did you know half the United States, like right in the middle, where you cut off, you just literally take half the United States right in the middle. They're called the Wachita tribe. They still own it, but they've been in legal battle in the United States. They've only gotten back 10,000 acres when they're supposed to get back millions. And that we're so far in that the reason why we had a crash is because the Moors filed lawsuits against the United States of America, the corporation, the imposter corporation that pretends to be our nation. Okay? They said that we want our money back, we want our heritage back, we want our land back. And there was a fund that was set up, a trust fund. And the honorable, I want to say there's all kinds of Moorish legacies of heroes, and what I understand the truth is that the Washita tribe is the original root word of where we get Washington, George Washington, Washington D.C.,
Yeah.
and also Wichita, the city Wichita.
Yeah.
That
just like
there's
Wichita Falls
a
in
family that's alive.
Texas.
There's a family that's alive that is in the inheritance of legacy, but because they don't have the manpower of the big military, there's no way they can really enforce to get it back. And so all of our explorers that came to early America were literally invading the Washita tribe and other tribes that mixed in with the American Indian and have a like black skin, red skin mix.
Yeah.
So this is called all Morocco for thousands and thousands of years before we came over and tried to make it our nation. That's where I'm sitting at. And the original flag now what it was hiding. The Ottoman Empire was actually helping and working and protecting. The Ottoman Empire was the latest development of this all-Moroccan empire. And that was the real reason why the Ottoman Empire was that clash with the Christian Empire. And I understand that Muhammad was really the medieval Muhammad. That Muhammad was not from the 7th century AD, but that's a rewritten of Christianity to distract that the Sultan Muhammad was actually the original Muhammad, and that he was known by another name, that he was actually a cardinal. And when he was not given the next role as a pope, he took his propaganda because he was a double agent that was coming down to the Middle East because he was a Khazar and he wanted to create a messianic role. Well, there are certain Khazars that did not want him as a Messiah. He turned against them, and that's the reason why Muslim became so hostile against certain Khazars called Jews. There's a natural hostility because they wouldn't accept him as Messiah. So what we know is the Quran Muhammad is totally different than the Sultan Muhammad, which is the original Muhammad. And supposedly he had like 4 other brothers, and they became some of the characters in the Bible. One of his brothers became Sultan Musa, became known as Moses, who naturally roamed in the Middle East. And a lot of their identities, some of the identities of sultans and part of the stuff, they were known as Egyptian, but they weren't the ancient Egyptians we know it. I mean, the history is so messed up and convoluted, but when they wrote a propaganda, it's called the Bible, as a cover story, so that way they can distract the power of the sultans. And but anyway, I can just go on and on about that, but they were the latest development of the Moors. But the Turkish sultans kind of leaned more against more literal and mystical Islam. But the Moors were all about legality and mysticism, but they were older than Islam and they hid under Islam. I understand that the gargoyle of Europe may actually have Moorish connections, and that the reason why they made the gargoyle ugly is so they were trying to demonize the Negroid in Europe.
Yeah, I believe that, and so let me add something there. And right here where I live in Austin, Texas, I just moved from the east side, which is Austin is a somewhat historical town in Texas standards, which is very old. But as far as like the white man and stuff like that, it's not very old. But where the black people live in some towns, they unfortunately use the N word and they call it the N town or whatever. But what may have been politically correct or they were using back in the 1800s in Austin, this is the part of town that I used to live in up until for like 9 years, up until just a few days ago, the east side of Austin. And back in the day, it was called a Gregory town. And Gregory, of course, comes from the Greek idea of Gregorio, or messenger angel, or in some cases, gargoyle. Gregory, gargoyle. And so that's a link. But trying to portray the black man as such.
And it's interesting that the gargoyle there could have been reptilian bloodlines that were within the black community that was in Europe. And we're talking about again the shapeshifters of Mexico, because when you think of Mexico, you only think of Mexicans and certain, you think of a certain ethnic group. But you look at where a lot of the Mexicans come from, they don't come from ancient China only. There are a lot of Middle Eastern and Hindi and Chinese mixed in together.
I didn't know that. I thought they were just their own people. I mean, why do they have to come from somewhere else?
Well, they're a hybrid. They're a mixture of a lot of cultures when they migrated. See, I think what we call as the Indian culture, I think it was ancient India, another empire that ruled. Because according to many circles in India, they teach they used to rule the world 20,000 years ago, and they had a world empire. And Rama was one of the world leaders. So that's the reason why I think. Now, you asked me this about 20 years ago. I was like, come on, really? I had skeptical, but the more I'm researching this, there's a lot of ancient, like you heard the word Indo-European, and that Sanskrit many scholars believe Sanskrit may actually be some of the contributions towards English, and that's the reason why it's called Indo, because of the pre-European, languages. And it's a term that's flung around in our Western world. Well, what does Indo mean? It could be because it's related to India. Indo-European, Indo this, Indo that. It's linked to the culture and languages, the ancient world of India. So that's a third empire that needs to be contended with. And so when Columbus thought, now when I say 20,000 years ago, that's of course that's kind of like a chronology where we don't know how the chronology was.
Right. In other words, that could be based on the false chronology. That could actually be 13,000 years instead of 20,000 years or whatever.
Right. And so when Columbus really was trying to come to the Americas, when he thought, they say that the Indian he thought he was going to India, the West Indies. No, I think he knew something and the church knew something, but the history is not telling the truth of what he knew. They were called Indians because it's still a leftover of the Indian Empire, and also the Moroccan Empire. A lot of these empires merged with each other.
Yeah, okay. Now that's the first time I've heard that idea, and I like that. Columbus knew more than what we said he did.
Right, and then we get into a whole new. That there's a guy named Anatoly Fomenko. He's a Russian mathematician.
Well, yeah. He's the guy that's in charge. He's one of the guys that was a chronology denier, right?
Yeah, and as we talked about before, in the lines of Newton, Sir Isaac Newton, and other people.
Sir Isaac Newton wrote a book about being. He was a chronology denier, and in Western Hermeticism, or at least in the secret society I'm in, when they're venerating these saints and stuff like that, they named Sir Isaac Newton among them.
Yeah, so see, I think archaeology was actually the Medici family. It was a joke by them so they could sell relics. It was a joke. But it became a science, I think, as a propaganda. So that way, certain chronologies have to be invented. So that way it justifies the elites.
Yeah, that's right. But where they screwed up is that like you said, that it doesn't match up with the record of the skies of the solar flares, or not the solar flares, but the solar eclipses, the lunar eclipses and stuff. It doesn't match up with the astrological record, the historical record.
Yeah, I found that the Jesuits have played such a role of erasing that the Egyptians spoke Arabic. And then they try to blame it on Akhenaten when it wasn't Akhenaten. I think they're even hiding the whole history of Egypt. They're hiding Chinese history. They went back. These Jesuits from the Vatican, they went and invaded literally the entire world, got a hold of the archives and rewrote them. And because most of the people were uneducated everywhere, and they pretty much have reprogrammed the way people believe their culture and isolated it. So that way it was always on a Vatican model. And that's the reason why the Vatican rules the world on an ecclesiastic level. The Pope actually owns you, the birth certificate, marriage certificate, death. Everything is ecclesiastic law. That's what maritime law is. That's what the Federal Reserve is. Yes,
and and we can look back to the Vatican, and of course they are the the spiritual capital of the world, just like London is the economic capital of the world, just like I guess Washington D.C. is the military, capital of the world. So
the Khazar triple, the
triple threat,
the triple power of the Khazar Empire. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
And when we talk about New World Order, there's these Russian hordes. There's the golden horde, the blue horde, the white horde. There's actually 5 colors, and they were Russian hordes that invaded the world. Well, when they lost their Kagan rule, because the Romanovs decided to do a revolution and get rid of the old Kagans, these Kagans had nowhere to go, so they resettled and they broke into different tribes. The Illuminati is one of the tribes. And so they developed the tribe of the myth of the 12 tribes of Israel. It's just the broken thing, and they use 12 tribes as an astrological symbolism. It's really it's all about the tribes of the hordes, the Russian hordes, and they got locked out of their own kingdom. And it's interesting that Michael Romanov, I think, was the beginning of the Archangel Michael, and that these hordes became later known as the fallen angels in our stories, where they settled out and they had giants. The giants were actually originally Russian super soldiers, where they actually knew how to grow soldiers 7, 8, 10, 12, 15 feet, 20 feet tall. And I think it inspired some of the legends of the giants because they were super warriors and also on horseback.
Yeah, but what about the reality of the
they
giants?
Looked like taller soldiers than normal men who did not have access to horseback yet.
Yeah, and so then there's also the historical record of the giants, where it seems increasingly, positively for sure, there's been giants all over the world.
Well, the Smithsonian Institute has actually played a cover-up in the 19th and early 20th century. They're about collecting the bones and hiding them, maybe destroying them.
Who has?
They are a conspiracy of destroying the heritage of the giants.
Who is?
The Smithsonian Institute.
Oh, well, yeah. Let me tell you, you probably hadn't read my book, but my book, My Family Created the National Security State, and based, at least the title is based around my great uncle who basically single-handedly created the CIA, the NSA, the NASA. Of course, he wasn't the brains behind this thing. He signed the check for all of these things. And after he retired from controlling the defense budget of the United States of America for 40 years, guess what he did then? He went on to be on the board of directors of the Smithsonian.
Wow, there we go.
I mean, it just never ends, does it?
Yeah. Hey, how are we doing on time on your show?
Well, we're doing okay. Well, we got about another 10 minutes.
Okay. So lots learned in our show here. That man, the it's all incredible connection. Oh, and the cone heads. What I found I found that they actually rule our banking system. They're the calculators. They have a higher cranial function, and they show up to the board, like some of the most elite board meetings of the world.
Well, there's also the idea put forth by Dr. Edward Spencer and Karen Hudis that the longheads, coneheads, whatever you want to call them, own the World Bank. And that was
they actually literally walk among us. These coneheads, you've seen their elongated skulls. They actually are walking amongst us now.
Well,
and they hide. They live in underground and hidden. They don't show public. It's like when they leave these meetings, it's not like they sit there and go out and catch a cab like a normal person.
Right, exactly. And so, some people, not me, of course, but some people might refute the idea, of these elongated skulls saying, oh, well, that's just, Photoshop or something like that. Well, let me tell you, I've been obsessed with these elongated skulls since I was a child. And the most famous one is skull number 176. But a year and a half ago, I went to Peru to personally investigate the elongated skulls. And I've been 3 inches from skull number 176. I've seen multiple elongated skulls, and I can assure all our listeners that they are 100% real, 100% physical. They're not mocked up or anything. Now, one thing that's interesting about most of the elongated skulls we see, they display a female elongated skull, because unlike the human race where the male skull and the female skull are roughly the same size, right? I mean, obviously the male skull's a little bit larger than the female. But in these Homo capensis, or whatever you want to call them, the coneheads, longheads, elongated skulls, whatever, the Paracas people from Paracas, Peru, their male's head is almost twice the size of the female's head. So when you're looking, that's why they only show the female's heads, because the male's heads are like, some of them are like 22 inches long.
Well, let me tell you this. Now, you tell me if you don't think I'm wrong, but what I understand is that there could have been actually an abnormality performed on purpose when they were little babies, where they put 45-degree boards around the head and tried to purposely mold the head while they're little babies and kids.
Yeah, well, that's called cradle boarding. That's a worldwide phenomenon, and there's a reason for that, and that is to emulate the rulers. In other words, to say, hey, my kid has some of these genetics of these long skulls. It's just an emulation. That's all it is. And if you go to the museums in Peru and you look at their displays with all the elongated skulls and everything, they show the process up on the wall, and they claim that that's how these skulls came about. When common sense will tell you no amount of cradle boarding is going to increase the volume of a human skull, much less change the morphology where they have a more robust jawbone, much less change the sagittal suture in the back of, between that divides the left and right occipital plates. It's not the same. And another thing I've noticed, personal observation, the eye sockets of the Paracas people, they're much rounder than ours. We don't really have round eye sockets. If you look at a picture of a skeleton or whatever, it's kind of, the eyes are more or less like upside down triangles. They're actually not very round. But the Paracas people have very round eyeballs or eye sockets. They're very much larger proportionally than ours are, and they're much more shallow. So their eyes, our eyes are almost like a little ball, where their eyes must have been much a different shape, because it's a much yeah.
Huh. Hey, now I changed the subject before we start wrapping up the show. Now I'm also an alchemist. Okay, like I conveyed. Now, what I understand is the Bible. If you try to take it literally, it's a BS story. If you try to take it allegorically, it's going to make more sense. When you try to take it alchemically, now the divine starts opening up. Okay. So despite the forgeries and the rumors, the legends, and whether it's historical or not, it's all obsolete. If you look at the alchemical message, there's a reason why the Rosicrucian movement was an instigator of the Protestant movement. They believed that they were trying to get the original message of the Bible back because we're all still perishing. So the whole point of the Bible, if you take it as an alchemical text, Isaac Newton knew is an alchemical text. All of his ideas were inspired because he believed alchemy was all throughout the text. Remember, alchemy is not literalism. It's about the secrets of the human body. It's about how to transform the human body into a higher potential. And I've got the secret. And it may be billions of years old. It may be off-world. No one knows where it came. But what it does, it turns mankind into not only a god, but everything you could ever imagine, that it brings out the infinite in us. And some alchemists, there's been rumors that some alchemists may have made it. Most alchemists failed. It's all experimentation. And so...
Well, not if there's a method. I mean, if there's a proven method, why would you need to experiment any further?
Well, no, it's an internal quest. It's not a shared quest. And so the idea of the resurrection and transformation in the glory form, it's all about how to activate your personal alchemy as an initiative.
Okay.
So
what about
you actually evolve? You actually know how to magnify your own genetics, your own everything, even the light contained. You actually can transform into something beyond human if you know the secrets of alchemy.
Right, and are not some of these secrets of alchemy? Some of them are physical, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's all physical. See, what it is it's not spiritual, physical, mental as a separation. It's uniting them all together. It's about uniting your subtle bodies. And when you unite your spirit, your mind, and everything with the physical, your physical even transforms. It becomes a new state of being.
You bet.
It starts to become plasma-based. It starts to become trans-dimensional based. This is where the resurrection body comes in. You actually develop a glorified body.
Sure. A light body, so to speak.
You start incorporating physics of where your body is no longer just ordinary, like wasteful flesh, but it's now become a vessel that knows how to contain higher and higher levels of pure energy, where you can start to develop the impossible. So we do have an infinite capacity in our bases, but if we don't know how to connect it, we become perishable. And that's the secrets of alchemy. That's the secrets of the resurrection. That's what the Rosicrucians were trying to get across. Now, just because there's a message, it doesn't mean that everyone's successful, but it is the hope of mankind that if we're ever going to be taken seriously on a galactic and intergalactic level, and that's where the superhuman comes in. That's vampirism is a sister study of alchemy, but alchemy is the mother of all sciences and all transformations, all branches, all knowledge, all religion. Alchemy has the secrets to it all.
Yeah, that's what they say. The philosopher's stone, so to speak.
Yeah, the philosopher's stone is a matter of what you think it means, and they can mean more than one thing. But the greater you initiate into yourself, the more the meaning changes to even a deeper level. So you're finding new philosopher's stones. There's literal philosopher's stones, and then there's alchemical, allegorical ones. But when you know how to, once you do the alchemy, it'll initiate yourself. It transcends all secret society schools. The ultimate initiation is about your own transformation, and in the end, you're really on your own.
Right.
And no secret society can do it for you.
That's absolutely right. But they'd like to hijack that process, especially if you have showing some certain forms of potential.
Yeah. Now, some secret societies will share some tools that will give you some supernatural powers, but in the end, it's all about your transformation. And I think that's what the goal is. That's where our salvation is. That's where your salvation. And you may spend thousands of lifetimes and most will never figure, but that's what the goal of alchemy is. It's the eternal quest to eventually get it right.
Well, just the very idea of salvation, reeks of salvationism, and the idea that mankind is somehow imperfect. I mean, if we are, and obviously we are, but that's probably because that we've been poisoned or genetically altered or something like this. Not that there's anything wrong with the pattern, the cosmic pattern of the human being. Because I don't, although we are going through
Well, let me tell you, it's about saving yourself. It's about not perishing. And then we also have to look at saliva, salve. It's a language of dissolving and rebuilding. So when the church got a hold of this, they've obviously made it yucky, because if they couldn't know the knowledge, they obviously don't care if you do. So it's all about the power of the state. But the alchemist was in contrast to that. The church went out and killed alchemists and went and dig them up to make sure they're dead in case they're trying to practice immortality. That's connected with a vampire digging people up out of a grave.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
I never heard it like that.
Yeah, so what I'll do is I'm trying to put it all together, and vampirism is like the super soldier. If you apply vampirism right, it's about protecting yourself while you're developing alchemy, and not many vampires have developed that.
Okay, well,
they just get
a couple of observations and a couple of questions. And first of all, my real name, Anthropos, is of course my pseudonym that I write my books under, and I could go into that, but many of the listeners know that the name that I was born with, and I'm just going to give my first name right here, even though that my name's really not a secret, but it's Durward, Durward, which could mean the Dur, meaning, or the ward, like a warden of a prison is a protector. So Dur could be a deer, so I could be the protector of the deer, but also Dur is a door. So the protector of the door, so in fact the gatekeeper. But also the word Durward, which is really pronounced Jurd, it's basically the real word for the word that we know of today as druid. And so subconsciously, my parents, obviously they're not into any of these type of things. But yeah, it was fascinating that they gave me, and not necessarily that name because it was the family name. My father.
I'll probably call you An because it's easier to remember. But
No, yeah, I definitely, I want you to call me that. But we just talked about shamanism so much during this episode. I just kind of wanted to bring in my own personal, synchronicity to this whole shamanistic idea. And you did mention DMT earlier. And while I have not necessarily done DMT, I have engaged in the ayahuasca rituals in the Amazon jungles in Peru with a real shaman that did not have one drop of white blood in him. I guarantee it. Not that
if you try some of their things, they claim to see aliens and other beings, and you start to remove the veil of what you can see. It's not hallucination.
Well, yeah, and there's one man who's a Westerner who wrote a book about his experiences, and this is back in the 70s, in his ayahuasca adventures. And he was so confounded, he ran into like an alien, and the alien told him that, yes, we created you. And then when he came back to consciousness, he told the shaman that. He's like, yes. And the aliens, they're real, and they created us. And the shaman just started laughing. He said, oh, you met them? He said, oh, they lie about everything. He just laughing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, hey, one last thing. You know the UFO part? Some UFOs are created out of our own conscious, and when we create so much, we worship everything we create. Man is addicted to that. And so some of these things that we create come back to find their creator, and we don't even know that we're their creator sometimes. So a lot of UFOs, a lot of aliens, a lot of things, when you put enough psychic power, they actually gain the consciousness of their own. So it's like a haunting. And they do come back. And I know the graves, they match the dwarves, called the home of the Svartalheim in Norse mythology. And they create Thor's hammer and, the spirit of Odin. Isn't that interesting? These same dwarves are now creating weapons for the government in exchange so they can abduct. So you got the same beings just under a new mythos, modern mythos.
Well, and let me tell you, at that reptilian museum I went to, they had these little creatures that are kind of like little fairies or something, but there was one character amongst them who had a brazier, in other words, a flaming brazier, which, gives us the idea of metallurgy, the art of the gods. And it's fascinating that all of these little fairies or whatever they were, they resembled the, Aztec people or the Mayan people. In other words, their physical features, and which is a hairless face and, a hairless chest and stuff. But this one little worker thing, I guess, who made like Thor's hammer or whatever, he was depicted as a little man with a beard. He had a full-grown beard, and so it's fascinating.
Yeah, it starts connecting with the nose again. And now let's look at that. Now, according to the Norse mystics of the Brotherhood of Odin, it's believed that when you esoterically interpret what they are, they represent our ancestral skills. Like if you're a mechanic or you're good with your hands, you're an artist. Well, that skill goes somewhere when you die. So there's an archive, and that's what these are. And that's the reason why they make UFOs. And they're trying to imitate what we build, and they create an astral version of it.
That's fascinating. I've never heard it like that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, hey, how are we doing on top of the show?
Well, we just basically finished it right there. But let me tell you, it went longer than we thought it would. And let me tell you, Molecule Man, thank you for spending almost 2 hours with me here tonight. It's going to be a fascinating
Isn't that great?
episode. Yeah. So in closing, your identity is hidden and everything. So we don't, have a website or a book or anything to refer to anyone to. But possibly we'll be doing some more interviews soon. And thank you for joining me.
Thank you. That was a good time.
All right, man. Good night.
All right, now.